Hi everyone, this is Klein Sensei. I'm going to be reading the introduction to my book, The Life-Giving Sword, Kazuo Chiba's Life in Aikido. Again, this is the new edition of the book that's come out in paperback last year, but I understand it's hard to get right now. I'm trying to get a ebook version approved. Hopefully we'll hear about that in the next few days. But for now I'm going to read parts of it, and this is the first part, which kind of explains why I wrote the book and how it came about. So let's get started. Author's introduction. Please don't read this book. Reading this book would be wrong on so many levels. First of all, this is a book principally about Aikido, a dynamic martial art that is meant to be practiced, not read about. Aikido is a living thing, different in every era, every class, every technique. To pin down the art at one moment in time in the medium of text, or even in conversation, is counter to its very essence, goes the argument. If, as Elvis Costello said, writing about music is like dancing about architecture, writing about Aikido is like translating the flight of a bird into binary code. Don't even try it, I was advised. Second, this book is a mistake because it focuses on one teacher among the dozens who were direct students of Aikido's founders, Morihei Ueshiba, and the tens of thousands who have been inspired by his creation over the decades. The wrongness of focusing on one individual was brought home to me in Tokyo, when person after person insisted that there were no individual styles of Aikido, only individual people practicing a constantly evolving living art. To single out one person for a biography also runs counter to deeply felt humility in Japanese culture. This humility is so ingrained that we didn't even propose this biography to Chiba Sensei while he was alive. His dismissal of the idea would have been uncompromising and potentially painful. Aikido, like Japanese culture, prizes the efforts of a community over the experiences of an individual. Finally, if you're going to focus on one Aikido teacher, why Kazuo Chiba? Although he was a direct student of the founder, Chiba was an outlier from the day he first arrived at Morihei Ueshiba's Aikido dojo, uninvited and unwanted, in 1958. In the decades that followed, Chiba Sensei's art attained worldwide renown, but not always in a positive way. The broken bodies were many, the outbursts legion, his family life hardly idyllic. Of all the people to hold up as an exemplar of the art of peace, Chiba seems a questionable choice. There are teachers of his generation with more dojos, technicians of Aikido with more influence, and popularizers of the Japanese martial arts with a higher profile. Pick someone else. So now I'll tell you why you should read this book. First of all, a book about Aikido can give you valuable insight into why the art is so compelling to so many, as told through the stories of those who have devoted their lives to it. Of particular interest to me are the anecdotes throughout the book that elucidate through personal stories the appeal of Aikido practice and the bond between student and teacher, so central to Chiba's art and worldview. If you don't practice Aikido, you may wonder why so many sacrifice so much to an art that is often painful, frustrating, and financially unrewarding. The book may offer some answers, but you'll have to try Aikido yourself to fully understand. Second, focusing on one individual story makes the story of art of Aikido come alive, especially if that individual was a member of a pivotal generation of teachers. Many in the post-war cohort of students of Morihei Ueshiba who went abroad were living experiments in cross-cultural pollination. Chiba's story is that of the improbable and wildly idealistic gamble taken by the founder's son, Kishimaru Ueshiba, in the early to mid-1960s. He would send young Japanese men overseas to fulfill his father's mission to bring the different countries of the world together through the harmony and love contained in Aikido. Many of these men had no money, few connections, and didn't speak the language of the countries where they were sent. Barely 2 decades after their country had been devastated in World War II, these men were going to the homelands of their former enemies, facing seemingly insurmountable physical, cultural, and emotional obstacles. The challenges facing these missionaries were not the least temporal. They were trying to impart values and concepts drawn from Japan's distant past, values out of fashion even in their home country. In many ways, the mission was as if a Tokugawa-era samurai had been sent to the swinging London of 1966 to recruit more warriors for the shogun. How was this supposed to work? How did it turn out? Tracing the experiences of one of these men and the outcome of his mission is worthy for historical reasons alone. Third, Kazuo Chiba was in many ways the perfect exemplar of what makes Aikido special. The art is an amalgam of the violent and the peaceful, a sword-based martial art that was also promoted as the art of peace. Students of the founder ran the gamut of personality types, from the Buddha-like saints to the introverted scholars to the glad-handing ambassadors to the angry brawlers. Chiba had all of these aspects to his personality, but he is best remembered in many circles for his intensity and, yes, rage. One could call that an excess of martial spirit. Others would call it an anger management problem. Regardless, he was a self-described flawed human being struggling with a painful past and navigating a career path with many challenging twists and turns. In addition, his story highlights the duality of Japanese culture, or any culture for that matter. Behind the smiling women in kimonos and cherry blossom vistas, Japan continues to grapple with its brutal recent history and repressive post-war present. Every time he stepped onto the Aikido mat, Chiba personified the uncomfortable fact that Japanese culture, like all others, has aspects both noble and savage. From a practical perspective, Chiba is also a good choice for a biography in English because he left a substantial record of writings in English, along with multiple interviews in both Japanese and English. Communicating the complexity and beauty of the art of Aikido across cultures was a lifelong preoccupation for him, and he tried again and again to reach out to students through his writing on topics like the teacher-student relationship, the importance of meditation and misogi, and the stages of Aikido mastery. As a writer, Chiba was truly gifted in his second language, pushing English to the limits on the page, much in the way he pushed students to their limits on the mat. Having edited many of his raw manuscripts in English, I can attest that he blended both the style of a poet and the direct, uncompromising language of a fulminating preacher. As an editor's job with him was principally to correct the minor usage errors and get out of the way. In speech, Chiba was comfortable using slang from both of his adopted homes, England and Southern California, mixed with erudite vocabulary he picked up in reading that ranged from Walt Whitman to Confucius to Shakespeare. Perhaps no other direct student of Sensei left such a detailed public record of his actions, thoughts, and emotions. From that testimony, we can get a sense of the experiences and internal struggles of many of his peers in similar circumstances as young Aikido teachers in the West. Despite the wealth of information we have in Chiba's own words, however, there are gaps in the narrative. One incident he never addresses directly in his writings is the one for which he is most famous in Aikido circles, killing Sensei's dog. The way this tale has been warped and embellished in various retellings, some of the most outlandish are posted online, of course, highlights the dangers of relying on second-hand accounts. In one account, the dog belonged to Sensei personally. In fact, the hapless mutt, however, lived in Tokyo with the family of Sensei's son, Kishimaru Ueshiba, at a time when the founder spent most of his time in Iwama. Some say the dog met its demise due to its noisy barking. Others insist it was despised by the uchideshi of the time for stealing sandals. One slanderous online version has the canine corpse being eaten. In fact, it was buried in the dojo courtyard behind Sensei's Shinto shrine. That version may have been contaminated by another unverified story that has Chiba getting into trouble for killing and eating one of Sensei's chickens at his master's country home in Iwama. Needless to say, all incidents related in this book have been verified by multiple sources whenever possible, often with the generous help of Aikikai Hombu Dojo, which is under the leadership of Sensei's grandson, Moriteru Ueshiba. That said, there may be some chicken feathers floating around. So yes, you should read this book. Better yet, put on your gi, practice Aikido for a few hours, then read this book. Chiba Sensei would not approve of this biography in concept, but we think it begins to do justice to a fascinating, challenging, and eventful life.